Hi. Yo, so I've redone this video like 7 times now. It hasn't been the same video each time. Originally this was about the system overview trailer, so, you know. At this point I just want to make something and get it out, so I might as well take part in the big discussion right now, which is locking in predictions for the final roster of characters. Right now there's 6 Mondays left until Rebirth of Souls actually comes out, and people are getting a little bit frantic about their favorites getting in. Right now I'm just going off of the default logic that X amount of weeks equals Y amount of characters, just because we can't reasonably predict double reveals or break weeks. I do acknowledge those theories though. I think another break week is pretty unlikely, but I'm definitely not denying the possibility of a double reveal accompanying some kind of launch trailer. I just don't want to factor that idea in here and get too ahead of myself. There's also the coming soon theory that I want to address real quick. On the Rebirth of Souls website, there's a placeholder in the character gallery that says coming soon to indicate characters coming soon. People are making a big deal out of this because it appears in each category for Humans, Soul Society, and Arrancar, but I don't think this means anything. It'll only ever have any impact if one of them actually gets taken off than if they just stay on the website, but it's got a lot of people using it as evidence to say that there are still characters to come in each category.
But I always say the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
What?
Simply because you don't have evidence that something does exist does not mean that you have evidence that something doesn't exist. What I'm saying is that there are known knowns and that there are known unknowns, but there's also unknown unknowns, things we don't know that we don't know.
What?
So starting since before Komamura, I've been compiling a list of Bleach characters that are the most recurring in discussions, and I'm just going to run through them, provide my arguments on if they could and should be in the game, then end the video by locking in my final 5. And yes, to quickly address Noitra, I know he got leaked. We'll address his unique case later, but he was already in my final 5 anyways. So I want to start by addressing probably the hottest character right now, which I think is Yumichika. Maybe you disagree if you're not in as many Rebirth of Souls spaces, but most everyone is at least mentioning the possibility of Yumichika after the Ikkaku reveal. Right now, the main arguments for Yumichika are that it still says coming soon over the Soul Reapers section, Yumichika is directly mentioned in Ikkaku's description, and that he has a pillar fight in FKT. Yeah, there's not much to go off of right now. Honestly, I haven't really thought that it looked good for Yumichika based solely on his own abilities, but I guess it's not totally impossible. I've already pointed out the coming soon placeholders, and I don't personally buy into them, but the character bios are a bit different. Initially, I shrugged these off as pure hopium and kinda stupid, but while making this video, I verified each one of them, and it's really hard to downplay how each bio actually references only characters who are playable or in the game in some way. Right now, the only exceptions to that rule are Yumichika, Momo, and Grimmjow's boys. And in Hiyori's case, she appears as an assist in Shinji's moveset, and now that Ikkaku is out, it seems like Grimmjow's boys might be in the story mode. My issue with Yumichika is that he's hard to visualize as a playable character because he doesn't really do much. Yes, he fights Hisagi, but that's off screen, and Ganju probably won't be showing up in the game in general. Also, his Zanpakuto is just really confusing. Fujikajaku is just 4 blades that don't do shit, but look really stupid, and his real Shikai was a glorified one-shot. I thought that would just be a Keycone, but I also never imagined that the pillar fights or Yumichika would be in the game. In my mind, he's really hard to imagine as an actual playable fighter, but I thought the exact same thing about Xyle, and he turned out just fine. So Yumichika is weird right now. Since I mentioned her already, let's go ahead and talk about Momo. Momo is in a pretty tight spot right now. If there is 5 characters left, which I'm limiting myself to, Momo needs to have a lot going on in her favor. Luckily, she does. As I mentioned earlier, she's referenced in 3 separate character bios, we've seen her model already, and in general, she's really important to the Soul Society. Making a moveset for her is also really easy. She's great at Kido, which is something we've seen that they love to include, and she has a very simple Shikai, but the function can do a lot, which could translate really well into a fighting game. So I think she's the closest to literally confirmed that she could be. So all of the top 3 Espada I kind of want to address all at once. I figured that out of all of them early on that Hallibel was extremely likely. I don't think she'd be particularly hard to make a moveset for, and Toshiro is somewhat explicit about it. Stark is a little less so for me, but I think he's very likely too just because Shunsui is there. Having Shunsui in the game is kind of like its own little Neliel situation where his purpose is a little clear. There was this whole thing with the ESRB rating where people said that because of the descriptions for the game, like players being able to use guns, that it confirmed Stark. And I thought that was kind of reaching a bit, but Shunsui existing pretty much says all that we need to. Baragon was the odd one out for a while. His fight with Soifone and Hachi is weird. Respira is a weird ability to translate into a fighting game, and for a while I thought they might just off-screen that fight entirely. That theory was more so before the system overview trailer that confirmed 1000 Year Blood War DLC, since I had figured cut characters like the Vizards, and in that case, Baragon would be DLC characters to push sales. Currently, I do think he's pretty likely. And I mean, Soifone is literally standing with everyone else who fights in the Shinji trailers, so I think that speaks the loudest. If we ever do get Baragon, I really do want to see his bio and if it mentions all the dudes from the pillar fights, mostly because I'm curious if they'll actually show up as story fights. Now I want to get the last 3 Espada out of the way, starting with Aranjero, and apparently my take is pretty hot. I don't really get how this is a question. Of course Aranjero is going to be in the game. I think the main reason people have been so dismissive is because of his resurrection. I've seen people bring up his popularity and his whole can't be in the sun thing, but it's never convinced me. I think people are most convinced that his fight with Rukia will be a cutscene where he transforms with Galtaneria and impales her, but I just want to remind everyone that Xayalaparo is a playable character in the game. The guy whose entire fight is nothing but talking after dodging like 2 hits from Renji is a playable character who's likely going to fight him, plus have a second fight with Mayuri after he loses with Uryu. And remember that neither of them directly attacked each other in that entire fight until Mayuri stabbed Xayal at the end. I think it wouldn't be impossible to make a moveset based on the few things that Aranjero does do in their fight. I think that using Cayenne is overall the smartest move, but copying his moves from Heat the Soul wouldn't really be a bad idea either. He used both Nejibana and Galtaneria simultaneously and the sun didn't collapse, so you could do the same thing here and maybe even give him skins to choose between Aranjero or Cayenne. One of his key cones could literally just be him charging like he did when he impaled Rukia, or either of his specials in Brave Souls or Heat the Soul. The transition between the 2 forms might be weird and a bit jarring, but it's done fine in Heat the Soul, and Okiora got the sauce on his transition, so that'll cook up just fine. I know I focused a lot on Aranjero, but he's easily one of the most overlooked and underrated characters when it comes to roster discussions, and I think it's time he gets his credit. No one has ever convinced me he won't be in, and I've actually grown more and more convinced he would be the more we've seen of this game. I have less to say about the other 2, so I guess we'll start with Zomari. I've been really dismissive of Zomari like pretty much since the beginning. Taking into account the Espada that matter. Dude, nobody gives a shit about Zomari. Zomari might be the worst Espada just because nobody cares.
I mean, nobody remembers, bro.
I'm trying to be as objective as possible with this video, so I'll give him his W's and be a little more open to the idea here. We've seen Byakuya without his captain's coat as an alt skin, which is how he fought Zomari, but we've also already seen it used for when him and Renji pull up to take Rukia back, since back then he didn't have it. The only other thing really working in his favor is the fact that the other captains do actually show up and fight, but I personally think that Byakuya's contribution is the least impactful overall. Yes, he does save Rukia, but this could also just be a cutscene. I won't rule it out entirely, there is something there, even if it's small to me. Yami is a lot more difficult though. He shows up in a lot of the arc and has a fight with a lot of characters who are playable in this game, including Ichigo. The main reason people are being so dismissive of him right now is because of his resurrection and the lack of an actual conclusion to his fight. Also, people just straight up don't like this character. I don't know, he might be one of the most confusing characters to try and get in for me. I don't think so though. Most of Yami's contributions to the story can be summed up with one Sparking Zero slideshow. If we're talking Yami, I guess now is as good a time as ever to bring up Orihime. I've kind of joined everyone else in thinking that she's probably just being excluded to make space for people who actually fight on the roster. I agree that she should probably be in, and it's a little crazy to see her in so many trailers, outfits, on the box art, and still not have her be playable. But with some of the characters left, I don't think I can keep putting her on my roster anymore. So obviously there's also the other Ichigos. White is the one that has people a bit more divided, I think. He could be his own character, or he could be an alt costume, and nobody is entirely certain of which. What we have to go off of right now is not much. We know that Ichigo's inner world is in the game as a stage, so we'll most definitely fight White at some point in the story, but that still doesn't tell us whether he's his own character or if that'll be a mirror match. At the end of the announcement trailer, we see White doing what looks like it could be a Keycone move, or it could just be an animation for him in the story. We don't know. Either way, this doesn't really help either, since we now know that unique Keycone moves exist for Ulquiorra when specifically fighting Ichigo, which means that this then could be a unique Keycone move for Ichigo where he's more White-like while using the alt skin. I personally think that that's the case here. He'll have unique Keycone animations and maybe even an intro and victory animation, and have all of the voice effects, but he won't actually be his own character. The primary counter argument is that Ichigo and White don't fight similarly. This is because of him throwing around Zangetsu by the cloth during Ichigo's fight with Kenpachi. I don't really think this matters. They fight similarly enough. It's not like White doesn't fight normally either, and Ichigo wasn't exactly fighting back. Plus, the best example of White's unique fighting style comes from an extremely fan-servicey filler arc. Dangai Ichigo is also in a really similar situation. I think more people are leaning towards a unique character though, and that makes sense. It is his peak, but I have no idea how this is even gonna work. Like, I can definitely see the arguments for giving him a counter and maybe a command grab, but I have genuinely zero clue how you put this form into the game as its own character. And to be honest, I personally don't really care for a third Ichigo. I'd be a little sad knowing that slot could have been a character I find more interesting, but I also can't deny that it seems pretty likely of them to add another one. So now that all is said and done, the final 5. So we already know that Noitra is next week, or at least soon, so we're all gonna acknowledge that this is his slot while also excluding him from the ranking entirely. Out of everyone in my top 5, I probably have to start with Araniro. I can't realistically imagine this game without him, and honestly I think that it'd be a pretty big fumble to not include him. But I'm also probably the least confident in him out of any of the other characters in my top 5. I do think that there are signs and hints, but not enough. I think a Kaien mention to reinforce the bio theory would help, but we don't have that. He's still pretty likely though, and I think it's stupid to write him off as a cheap boss fight or a cutscene. All of the top 3 Espada will be in. If I had to get specific just to make a ranking, Baragon is probably the lowest on the list for me. He has the weirdest fight, the weirdest abilities, and he was killed by a guy who almost certainly won't be in the game. That said, Soifone is with everyone in the Shinji trailer, and she has her Bankai as a Keycone move, which kind of says a lot. It's not confirmation, of course, but to me, the fight relevance in the Keycone moves is some of the most powerful hints we've ever gotten. Next up, by a much bigger margin, is Stark. He's kind of just a given right now. We're all just waiting to actually see him and get him out of the way, since Shinsui being playable is a dead giveaway. Hallibell is the one of the trio that I'm most confident in. I think everyone knows that she's in, but I've seen people debate semantics on her popularity in Japan and that affecting her chances. Finally, you knew it was coming. Just like the other Espada, you know it, I know it, she's going to get her own trailer eventually. From Momo being the most mentioned character out of any of them between character bios on the Rebirth of Souls website to her being fully modeled and shown off, I think we're all just waiting to see her character reveal. The difference between me and you is that I'm waiting with open arms. Right now, out of all the confirmed characters, I'm finding a lot of them really cool, but I'm thinking Mayuri and Gin are probably standing out to me as the 2 I'll play the most. I do like to play a lot of Quan Chi. There's actually a surprising amount of fun looking characters to me in this game. Kisuke, Shinji, Soifone, all of them look really fun to me. I'm just so impatient right now, bro. This game looks so good, and I just want to play all the characters and find my main and jump online immediately. That is, until the Momo trailer comes out. I will be playing nothing but Momo from day 1 when that happens, and I am coming for you. You better be ready to square up, lil bro, because if this game got any kind of ranked, I am gunning for your head top day 1. If there's anything to take away from this video and ranking, it's that there's probably more than just 5 characters left. If you agree or disagree with anything I've had to say in this video, let me know. I make videos because I want to push the discussion even farther and make my thoughts known. If you want to drop your 2 cents down in the comments, I want to discuss Rebirth of Souls with anyone else that wants to. I'm happy just as long as we're keeping the discussion alive. Keep talking about Bleach and don't let the hype die down. I'm out for now. Peace.
10s, 50s, 20s ain't around, strictly hundreds, please. Syrup City.